The kitchen clock read 2:47 a.m. when I heard the front door creak open. Julia was trying to be quiet, but after 15 years of marriage, I knew every sound our old house made. The floorboard by the coat closet always groaned. The third step on the staircase squeaked like a rusty gate. What I didn't expect was the second set of footsteps. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing my third cup of coffee and pretending to review tomorrow's renovation estimates. Sleep had abandoned me weeks ago, right around the time Julia started working late every night and coming home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "Nick?" Julia's voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she felt guilty. "What are you doing up?" "Couldn't sleep?" I didn't look up from my papers. "How was girls' night with Sherry?" The pause lasted too long. Then I heard him clear his throat. Brent Wallace stepped into my kitchen like he owned the place. Perfectly pressed shirt at 3 a.m, not a hair out of place, wearing that smug smile that made me want to rearrange his face. "Evening, Nick." He said my name like it tasted sour. "Hope you don't mind me dropping Julia off. We had a few drinks, didn't want her driving." I finally looked up. Julia stood behind him, lipstick smudged, dress wrinkled, avoiding my eyes. Brent had his hand on her lower back, possessive and deliberate. "How thoughtful," I said, setting down my coffee, though I'm pretty sure Sherry lives in the opposite direction. Brent's smile widened. "Actually, we weren't with Sherry tonight. Julia and I had some work to discuss. You know how demanding her job can be." The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. Julia worked in HR at his law firm, but she wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't important enough for after-hour strategy sessions. We all knew it, and Brent was enjoying every second of this charade. "Right," I said. "Work, at a bar, until 3 a.m. "The Marriott downtown has an excellent lounge," Brent continued, straightening his tie. "Very professional atmosphere. Perfect for discussing Julia's upcoming promotion." My wife finally spoke up. "Nick, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Make what harder?" But I already knew. The suitcase by the front door, the way she couldn't look at me, the satisfied gleam in Brent's eyes. "I'm staying at Brent's place for a while," Julia said, finally meeting my gaze. "We need some space to figure things out." "We?" I stood up slowly. "Or you and him?" Brent stepped forward, chest puffed out like a peacock. "Look, Nick, I get that this is difficult, but Julia deserves better than this." He gestured around our kitchen with its chipped counters and outdated appliances. "She deserves someone who can provide for her properly." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The insult hung in the air like smoke. I was a contractor, had been for 12 years. I built things with my hands, fixed what was broken, made decent money doing honest work. But to Brent Wallace, attorney at law, I was just blue-collar trash. "Someone like you?" I asked. "Someone who appreciates her intelligence, her ambition." Brent's hand moved to Julia's shoulder. "Someone who can give her the life she wants." Julia grabbed her suitcase. "I'll call you tomorrow, Nick. We can talk about arrangements then." They headed for the door together. Brent paused at the threshold, looking back at me with that infuriating smirk. "Don't take it personally, Nick. Sometimes people just outgrow each other." The door closed behind them. I heard Brent's BMW purr to life in my driveway, watched through the window as they drove away. Julia didn't look back. I sat down and finished my coffee. The house felt different now, hollow and strange. 15 years of marriage, gone in 10 minutes of polite cruelty. My phone buzzed. Text message from Derek, my work partner and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Saw Julia and that lawyer guy at Murphy's Tavern tonight. Looked pretty cozy. You okay, man?" I typed back, "Peachy. See you at the Henderson job tomorrow." But I wasn't okay. I was angry. Not the explosive, throw things kind of angry. The cold, calculating kind that settles in your bones and starts making plans. Brent Wallace thought he'd won. Thought he'd taken my wife and humiliated me in my own kitchen. Thought I'd just roll over and accept it because he wore expensive suits and had a law degree. He was about to learn something about underestimating people. My phone started ringing at 6:23 a.m. Julia's number flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 6:31, then 6:45. By 7:15, she'd called 8 times. I was in my garage workshop, organizing tools and trying to focus on anything except the empty coffee mug on the kitchen counter. Julia always made the coffee. For 15 years, I'd wake up to the smell of French roast and the sound of her humming off key in the kitchen. The phone rang again. This time I answered. "What?" Nick, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I noticed. We need to talk. About last night. About everything. I picked up a socket wrench and tested its weight in my hand. Seemed pretty clear to me. You're staying with Brent. You want space. You want someone who can provide for you properly. I never said that. You didn't have to. Your boyfriend said it for you. Silence on the other end. Then, it's not what you think. What I think is that you've been having an affair with your boss for months, and last night you decided to rub my nose in it. Nick, what I think is that you brought him to my house, let him insult me in my own kitchen, then walked out with him like I was nothing. Please, can we just meet somewhere? Talk this through like adults? I hung up. Derek showed up 20 minutes later with 2 cups of gas station coffee and a box of donuts. He was a good friend that way, always knew when someone needed sugar and caffeine. Rough night? He asked, settling onto my workbench. You could say that. Want to talk about it? I told him everything. Derek listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head or muttering under his breath. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That lawyer guy's got some nerve, he finally said. Brent Wallace, partner track at Morrison, Klein & Associates. Drives a silver BMW. Lives in one of those glass condos downtown. You've done your homework. Julia talked about him enough. How smart he was. How successful. How he was going places. I took a long sip of coffee. Guess she decided to go with him. Derek studied my face. What are you thinking, Nick? I'm thinking Brent Wallace made a mistake last night. What kind of mistake? He thought I'd just disappear quietly. Thought he could take my wife and humiliate me and I'd slink away like a beaten dog. And you're not going to do that. Not even close. My phone buzzed with another call from Julia. I declined it and opened my laptop instead. Social media was a wonderful thing when you knew how to use it. Brent Wallace had profiles on everything. LinkedIn showed his professional accomplishments, his climb up the law firm ladder. Facebook revealed his social circle, his expensive hobbies, his weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard. Instagram was full of selfies at upscale restaurants and charity events. What are you looking for? Derek asked, peering over my shoulder. Ammunition. It didn't take long to find it. Brent was careful about his public image, but not careful enough. A photo from last month showed him at the country club with several people I didn't recognize. The caption mentioned celebrating another successful merger, but it was the woman standing next to him that caught my attention, not Julia, someone else entirely. Blonde, elegant, wearing a wedding ring that caught the camera flash. Brent's arm was around her waist, and they looked very comfortable together. I cross-referenced the photo with the law firm's website. The woman was Catherine Morrison, wife of senior partner James Morrison, Brent's boss. Well, well, I muttered. What? Looks like Brent has expensive taste and poor impulse control. Derek squinted at the screen. Is that his boss's wife? Sure is. Think there's something going on there. I scrolled through more photos, looking for patterns. Brent and Catherine appeared together in several shots over the past few months, always at professional events, always maintaining plausible deniability, but the body language was unmistakable. I think Brent Wallace is playing with fire, I said, and Julia has no idea she's the other woman. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Julia. Nick Harlan? Speaking. This is Sherry Caldwell, Julia's friend. I think we should talk. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I met Sherry at Murphy's Tavern, the same place Derek had spotted Julia and Brent the night before. It was a dive bar that served decent burgers and minded its own business, which made it popular with people who had things to discuss. Sherry looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap and checking her phone every 30 seconds. She'd always been high-strung, but today she seemed ready to jump out of her skin. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I sat down across from her. You sounded urgent on the phone. I feel terrible about last night, about lying for Julia. The waitress came by and I ordered a beer. Sherry asked for white wine, then changed her mind and asked for whiskey instead. How long has it been going on? I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. She swore me to secrecy. Sherry's hands shook slightly as she reached for her drink. Said you two were having problems, that she needed time to figure things out. Problems? She said you'd grown apart, that you didn't understand her anymore. I took a long pull from my beer. And Brent understands her? He makes her feel important, takes her to nice places, buys her expensive gifts, makes her feel like she matters. She mattered to me. Sherry looked uncomfortable. I know. I told her she was making a mistake, but she wouldn't listen, said Brent could give her things you never could. Like what? Status, security, a future. The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. What changed? Why are you telling me this now? Sherry drained half her whiskey in one gulp. Because I found out something Julia doesn't know. Here it comes, I thought. Brent's been seeing someone else, another woman. I saw them together last week at the Riverside Hotel. You sure it wasn't Julia? Positive. This woman was older, blonde. Expensive clothes, expensive jewelry. They were all over each other in the lobby. I leaned forward. Did you recognize her? No, but I took a picture. Sherry pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. I was going to tell Julia, but then I thought maybe you should know first. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Brent and Catherine Morrison locked in an embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. His boss's wife, I said. Sherry's eyes widened. How did you? I've been doing my homework. I studied the photo more carefully. When did you take this? Last Thursday, around noon. Julia was at work? As far as I know. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Brent was juggling two affairs simultaneously, one with my wife and another with his boss's wife. It was either incredibly bold or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Are you going to tell Julia? Sherry asked. Eventually. What are you going to do? I finished my beer and stood up. I'm going to give Brent Wallace exactly what he deserves. Nick, please don't do anything crazy. Don't worry, I said. I'm not the crazy type. But as I walked back to my truck, I was already making plans. Brent had humiliated me in my own home, stolen my wife, and treated me like I was beneath his notice. He thought he was untouchable, protected by his expensive suits and law degree. He was about to learn that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner is the most dangerous one in the room. My phone buzzed with another call from Julia. I let it ring and drove home to my empty house, where I spent the evening researching everything I could find about Brent Wallace and his carefully constructed life. By midnight, I had enough information to ruin him 10 times over. The question was, where to start? The Ashbrook Summer Festival was the biggest event of the year in our little town. 3 days of live music, local vendors, and enough gossip to fuel conversations until Christmas. Everyone attended, from the mayor to the guy who collected shopping carts at the grocery store. It was the perfect place for a public confrontation. I spent the morning setting up my booth. As a local contractor, I participated every year, handing out business cards and chatting with potential customers. This year, though, I had a different agenda. Derek helped me arrange the display boards, showcasing our recent projects. You sure about this? He asked for the 10th time. Absolutely. It's going to cause a scene. That's the point. Julia and Brent arrived around noon, strolling through the festival like visiting royalty. She wore a new dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with Brent's money. He had his hand on her back, that same possessive gesture from my kitchen. They stopped at various booths, playing the happy couple. Julia laughed at Brent's jokes, gazed at him adoringly, performed the role of devoted girlfriend for anyone watching. I waited until they reached the center of the festival grounds, where the crowd was thickest. Then I made my move. Julia, I called out, loud enough to carry over the ambient noise. There you are. She turned, her face going pale when she saw me approaching. Brent's expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. Nick, Julia said carefully, what are you doing here? Same thing I do every year, working. I gestured toward my booth. You remember work, right? That thing some of us do to pay the bills? A small crowd was starting to gather, sensing drama. In a town like Ashbrook, entertainment was scarce, and people had good instincts for conflict. Brent stepped forward. So, is there a problem here? No problem at all, I said, pulling out my phone. Actually, I wanted to thank you both for the entertainment you've been providing. What are you talking about? Julia asked. I opened the voice recording app and hit play. Julia's voice filled the air, crystal clear. He's so boring, Brent. All he talks about is work and sports and fixing things around the house. You make me feel alive again. Then Brent's voice. You deserve so much better than that blue-collar loser. When we're together, it'll be different. I'll show you what real success looks like. The crowd murmured, recognizing the voices. Julia's face went from pale to bright red. Where did you get that? She demanded. Your phone, I said calmly. You left it at the house Tuesday night. Amazing what people record by accident these days. But I wasn't finished. The recording continued, and now it was a different conversation entirely. Catherine Morrison's cultured voice. James is getting suspicious, Brent. We need to be more careful. Brent's response? Don't worry about James. I've got him wrapped around my finger. Besides, Julia's the perfect cover. He thinks I'm serious about her." The crowd gasped. Julia stared at Brent in shock, finally understanding that she wasn't his only secret. "You're seeing someone else," she whispered. Brent's composure cracked. "Julia, I can explain. His boss's wife," I announced to the crowd. "Catherine Morrison, married 23 years, 2 kids in college. But don't worry, Julia. I'm sure you're special too." Brent lunged at me, his lawyer's facade finally cracking completely. "You piece of—" I sidestepped easily, letting his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled and fell face first into the fountain at the center of the square, soaking his expensive suit and destroying what remained of his dignity. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone started filming with their phone. Within minutes, the video would be all over social media. I looked down at Brent, sputtering and dripping in the fountain. "Careful there, counselor. Wouldn't want you to slip and fall." Julia stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. The perfect life Brent had promised her was dissolving in real time, in front of half the town. "This isn't over," Brent snarled, climbing out of the fountain. "You're right," I said. "It's just getting started." As they retreated through the crowd, Julia sobbing and Brent dripping wet, I felt a deep satisfaction settle in my chest. This was only the beginning of Brent Wallace's very bad week. Brent's silver BMW was parked outside his downtown condo when Derek and I arrived at 2 a.m. The security cameras in the garage had convenient blind spots, something I'd noticed during my reconnaissance. "You sure about this?" Derek whispered. He asked for it. We worked quickly and quietly. Plastic wrap under the hood, stretched tight across the radiator. Canned sardines tucked into the air conditioning vents. A small hole drilled in the oil pan, positioned to create a slow leak. The piece de resistance was the bumper sticker I'd had custom made. "I break for other men's wives." "Think he'll get the message?" Derek asked, admiring our handiwork. "If he doesn't, I've got plenty more where that came from." We were back home by 3 a.m. I slept better than I had in weeks. My phone rang at 8:30, unknown number. "Nick Harlan?" "Speaking." "This is James Morrison from Morrison, Klein & Associates. I believe you know my associate, Brent Wallace." "Interesting. The senior partner himself. We've met. I'd like to discuss a legal matter with you. Could you come to my office this afternoon?" "What kind of legal matter?" "I think it would be better if we spoke in person." I agreed to meet him at 2 p.m. After hanging up, I called Derek. "Morrison wants to see me." "Think Brent complained?" "Probably, but I've got a feeling there's more to it." I spent the morning researching James Morrison. 62 years old, founded his law firm 30 years ago. Pillar of the community. Married to Catherine Morrison for 23 years, just like I'd announced at the festival. The Morrison, Klein & Associates building was downtown, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. The receptionist directed me to the top floor, where James Morrison's corner office overlooked the harbor. Morrison was a distinguished man with silver hair and tired eyes. He gestured for me to sit across from his massive desk. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Harlan. Call me Nick." "Nick, I'll get straight to the point. I understand you've been having some difficulties with Mr. Wallace." "You could say that." Morrison opened a manila folder on his desk. "I've seen the video from yesterday's festival. Quite entertaining. Glad you enjoyed it. I also received some interesting photographs this morning. Would you like to see them?" He slid several 8x10 prints across the desk. Brent and Catherine Morrison in various compromising positions, taken with a telephoto lens at different locations around town. "Professional quality," I observed. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago," Morrison said quietly. "I had suspicions about my wife's behavior. And now you have confirmation." "Indeed." Morrison gathered up the photos. "Mr. Wallace seems to have poor judgment when it comes to women. Among other things. I'm terminating his employment effective immediately. I'm also considering whether to pursue legal action for breach of contract and professional misconduct." I leaned back in my chair. "What does this have to do with me?" "I want to make sure we understand each other, Nick. Brent Wallace has made enemies of both of us, but I handle my problems through the legal system. And you think I don't? I think you're a man who takes action when he's been wronged. I respect that, but I want to make sure your actions don't interfere with my legal proceedings." I stood up and shook his hand. "I appreciate the heads up, Mr. Morrison. You won't have any problems from me." "I'm glad to hear it." As I left his office, I was already planning my next move. Brent had lost his job, his reputation, and probably his fancy condo once word got around. But I wasn't finished with him yet. Julia had been calling all morning, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. It was time to have that conversation. I agreed to meet Julia at the Riverside Hotel, the same place where Sherry had photographed Brent with Catherine Morrison. The irony seemed appropriate. She was waiting in the lobby when I arrived, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The confident woman who'd walked out of my kitchen had been replaced by someone who looked lost and scared. "Thank you for coming," she said as we found a quiet corner. "You sounded desperate on the phone." "I am desperate." She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from our early years together. "Everything's falling apart, Nick." "What did you expect?" "I expected you to fight for me." Her voice broke slightly. "I expected you to try to win me back." "Instead of destroying your boyfriend's life?" "Instead of humiliating me in front of the entire town." I signaled the waitress for coffee. "You humiliated yourself, Julia. I just provided the audience. Brent says you're trying to ruin him. Brent's doing a fine job of that himself. I'm just helping things along." She leaned forward, desperation clear in her eyes. "He lost his job because of you. He lost his job because he was having an affair with his boss's wife. I just made sure the boss found out about it. You don't understand. We had plans, a future together." "What future?" "You were his side piece, Julia. His distraction while he played house with Catherine Morrison." The words hit her like a physical blow. She sat back in her chair, tears starting to flow. "That's not true." "It's completely true. You heard the recording? You were his cover story, nothing more. He loves me. He loves the idea of you. Young, impressed, willing to sneak around. But when it came time to choose between you and his boss's wife, who do you think he picked?" The waitress brought our coffee. Julia stared into her cup like it might contain answers. "I left you for him," she whispered. "Yes, you did." "I threw away 15 years of marriage." "Yes, you did." "And now I have nothing." I sipped my coffee and watched her cry. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part remembered the smug look on Brent's face in my kitchen, the casual cruelty of his insults, the way Julia had stood there and let it happen. "You could come home," she said finally. "Could I?" "We could try again, start over. Like nothing happened. We could work through it, go to counseling, whatever it takes." I set down my coffee cup and looked at her directly. "Julia, do you remember what you said to me the night you left?" She shook her head. "You said I didn't understand you anymore, that I couldn't give you what you needed. I was confused. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking perfectly clearly. You looked at our life together and decided it wasn't enough. You looked at me and decided I wasn't enough. That's not... You brought another man into my house and let him insult me to my face, then you walked out with him like I was nothing." She was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I can't take that back," she whispered. "No, you can't." "So what happens now?" I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. "Now you figure out how to live with the choices you made." "Nick, please. Goodbye, Julia." I walked away without looking back. Behind me I could hear her sobbing, but I didn't stop. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Brent was waiting by my truck when I got home. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the desperate appearance of a man whose world had collapsed in the span of 48 hours. "We need to talk," he said. "Do we?" "You've had your fun, made your point. Now it's time to back off." I unlocked my front door and walked inside, leaving it open behind me. Brent followed, just as I'd known he would. "Nice place," he said, looking around my living room with obvious disdain. "Very modest. It's home. Julia hated it, you know. The outdated kitchen, the cheap furniture, the complete lack of style. She never complained to me. She complained to me. A lot." Brent settled onto my couch without being invited. She used to fantasize about living somewhere better, somewhere worthy of her. I went to the kitchen and got a beer from the refrigerage. I didn't offer him one. "Is there a point to this visit?" "The point is that you've won. Julia's miserable, I've lost my job, and the whole town thinks I'm a joke. You got your revenge." "Did I? So now it's time to move on. Find someone new, rebuild your life, whatever. But leave us alone." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Us?" "Julia and me. We're going to work things out, start over somewhere else." "Are you now?" "She loves me, Nick. Not you. Me. That's not going to change just because you've made things difficult." I sat down across from him and opened my beer. "Brent, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you actually believe the things you say, or is it all just an act?" His face hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Julia called me 3 hours ago, begging to come home, crying about how she'd made a mistake and thrown away her marriage for nothing. She's confused, emotional, she'll come around. Will she? Because from where I sit, it looks like you've lost everything. Your job, your reputation, your boss's wife, and now my wife, too. Brent stood up abruptly. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. You're a fraud, Brent. A small man who thought expensive suits and big words made him important. But when the pressure came, you folded like a cheap tent. I'm warning you. You're warning me? I stood up too, and suddenly the room felt very small. You came into my house, insulted me in my own kitchen, and walked out with my wife. And now you think you can warn me? Brent backed toward the door, his bravado finally cracking. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't realize it yet. He left without another word, and I watched through the window as he drove away in his damaged BMW, trailing smoke from the oil leak. My phone rang. Derek. How'd it go with Julia? About like you'd expect. And Brent? He stopped by to threaten me. Derek chuckled. How'd that work out for him? About like you'd expect. I finished my beer and looked around my modest living room. The cheap furniture Brent had mocked, the outdated decorations Julia had apparently complained about. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Built with my own hands, paid for with honest work. Tomorrow Julia would probably call again. Maybe Brent too. They'd make more threats, more promises, more desperate attempts to salvage something from the wreckage of their affair. But it was over. They just didn't know it yet. I'd won, not through violence or illegal schemes, but through patience and careful planning. I'd turned their own arrogance against them, used their secrets as weapons, and let them destroy themselves. The underdog had gotten the last laugh after all. Outside, Ashbrook settled into its evening routine. Porch lights came on, families gathered for dinner. The ordinary rhythms of small-town life continued unchanged. But for Brent Wallace and Julia Harlan, nothing would ever be the same. I opened another beer and smiled.